First thing you want to do is make sure you have everything you need. Now you don't need to have all these tools, but it does make life a bit easier when you do have a few extra bits. You can use a plain old hacksaw if you want to cut the wood. You can use a screwdriver and get the screws straight into the wood that way. But obviously with these tools it's going to make life a little bit easier for me. So the basic design is using decking boards, cheap decking boards that I bought from Wicks at about £3.50 I think it was for a board, and £3.50 a board, and at the moment they're doing 4 for 3. I'm making 2 new raised beds today, which means I need 12 boards. So as you can see from this design, I'm using 2 decking boards, one on top of each other. That's a 1.8 meter long decking board, and the one down that side is just a 1.8 cut in half, so it's 90 centimeters. Makes it nice and easy. You have 1.8 meters by a 90 centimeter raised bed. So let's get started. So this is basically what you're going to need for this project, or what I recommend. Like I said, you don't need to use all the power tools. It does make life a bit easier, but essentially what you need is an upright, which will be the legs, and also it will hold together all the decking boards. So you need one of these, well, a few of them. I've got about 4 meters I think of this, which is 47 mil by 47 mil treated cheap wood from Wicks. This here, as I said before, is the cheap decking boards. In Wicks they call them the value boards. They're also pressure treated, so should last quite a while. I'm happy if I get about 3 years out of these, but looking at how the ones that I've already created are holding up, I think I might get even more than that. And then of course, to hold it all together, screws. So these are some old screws that I had left over from another project I was doing. They're just plain decking screws, and yeah, that'll do the job. So first things first, let's cut our decking boards so that we have the ends. So that's just basically cutting these in half. Measure the board to make sure it is actually 180, which this is perfectly 180. Then take a pen or a marker. Take a pen or a marker and mark it at the halfway point, which is 90. Using a set square, you can make sure you get the line correct. So this board is about ½ a centimeter too short, but not the end of the world. Doesn't have to be perfect. So we'll use this. Again, we'll mark it just under 90, seeing that it is a bit shorter. So we'll mark it about there. Probably best to mark these on the back side, just so you don't have any of the pen showing through. So with the uprights, this is a little bit different. So what this is doing, so essentially what the uprights are doing is it's going to be what holds together on the corners each of the pieces of wood. So you can see what I've done here. That's the upright. Try and make it as flush as you can with that. Makes it look nice and neat. And that there needs to be, I usually make it about a board's length longer, which is what pegs into the ground and keeps it all from moving about. So what you need to do, measure the height of the board, and this is 12 centimeters, which means I want it to be at least 24 centimeters, which is the height of two of these boards together. So 24, and I want it a bit deeper than that, so another 12, which would bring it up to 36. If your ground is quite soft, then it's very easy to peg these in to the ground, but if your ground is a bit harder, then you don't want the part that's going to go into the ground to be too long, because it'll be quite a mission to get that in. So you see that is how it's going to go. What we do need to do here though is cut this so that it can peg into the ground. And when you do choose which end you want to put in, make sure you choose the neatest cut, because that's going to go on the top. So both of these are all right. So here I'm going to make a cut to make this into a bit of a point. That'll help it when I want to peg it into the ground. There you go. And there you go, 4 legs. So now we are going to be attaching the ends. You want to make this flush with the top of the leg, just for the sake of keeping it nice and neat. I would recommend drilling a pilot hole. This just helps with not splitting the wood. What I like to do is, because of the fact that you're going to be putting a board over here plus a board over here, when you put the screw in, you don't want the other screw to hit this one. So try and keep consistent with how you approach this. For example, I like to use the second row when I'm doing the ends, the shorter bit. I'll use these ends over here. And then when I do this side, I'll use the third row in. That way you make sure that you're not going to hit the other screws. Let's make our pilot holes. Try and get it in the middle as best you can. And do the other hole as well. I would suggest getting the screw a little way in first. And there you go. So you'll notice I drilled this hole without going into this wood yet, and that's purely because I need to make this flush on that side as well as this side. So now I don't know, I have it correctly here. Got one screw in, I can at least move this around until it's flush there. Once I've got it where I need it, take a drill again and carry on through the hole. And there you go, that's your top one done. So let's get the second board on. Now that the first one's on flush, this one should go on nice and flush as well. So same as before, try keep this in line. I'm on the second row in. Second row in again. And you just repeat the process on the other side as well. There you go, that's your one end done. Let's do the second one and then we're ready to attach it to the long sides. And now the tricky bit is adding the long lengths to the sides. The reason I say it's tricky is because it's a little bit awkward working with this length. So normally I just lean it up on something like I'm doing here on this workhorse, and that should make life a little bit easier. Square it up at the top, square it up at the end, drill the pilot hole, not 2 in this time, 3 in. Once you've got the 1 screw in, again, get it flush on the end, and drill the pilot. Repeat that with the next piece. Now, because these are value boards, they should be 1.8 meters, but some of them are a little bit shorter or a little bit longer. But for our purposes, it's not the end of the world. You can neaten it up, you can get them all cut to the right lengths, but to be honest, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. Once you've done the first part, this part's a little bit easier because it holds itself nice and straight, leaning on the other end. Remember, 3 in, 1, 2, 3. One side done. So when you get to this part, it's the last bit that I'm doing here. You can adjust the wood, just move it around, squeeze it in as you need to, make sure that it all lines up perfectly at this last bit. Remember, it is wood, so it has got some play, it has got some adjustability. If you do screw things up at any point, you can always fix it up. There you go. So I need to get the first screw in again, and then I'll tighten up the rest. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just twisting this out a little bit, the bottom part, just so that it lines up a little bit better. There you go, it looks about right to me. So that's it, that's the raised bed built. You can see the sides are all fairly flush, which I'm happy with, and that's just going to get placed on the ground where I want to situate it. Now, a few things to consider when you are doing this. As you can see here, the spacing that I have, that wasn't just by chance. I actually measured the width of my lawnmower, so I can still push my lawnmower through here. It's a perfect fit, it's exact width of my lawnmower, so consider that. Consider little things like that, like you still have to mow the lawn around here unless you are going to put stones down there, but for me, I need to still mow, so make sure your measurements are correct. Also, what I've done on these ones, I've kept them all flush, so they're all lined up, just to keep them nice and neat, so just think about that as well. I've kept the spacing between them exactly the same, like I said, because of the lawnmower, but it also just looks nicer to me. So when I place this new one I've just built and the other one I'm going to build in a little while, I need to just consider how I'm going to place it and make sure I can still get my lawnmower through if I need to. And yeah, so I'll be back once I've built the other one and once I've got them in the ground. So there we have it, both of them are now done, and now we just need to position them and get them pegged into the ground so they don't move about. So the first things to do I'm pretty happy with the placement as it is right now, but I need to do some measurements to make sure that I have the right gaps that I want and just make sure it's all evenly spaced so it looks decent. So now that I have it positioned where I want it, I'm happy with the placement. Just double check it every time you do this. Make sure that it's exactly where you need it, because you don't want to have to pick this all up again and have to move it. So first thing to do here is to make sure when you hit this, you're not going to hit directly on this. It's quite soft wood and you will damage it. So get something that can go over it like this, and therefore this will get damaged and it'll spread the load to this. And a few hits. I wouldn't do it all the way in all at once, just start it off, do the next one. And then back again. And same thing on the other side. We aren't all the way in yet, but you just want it to go in nice and even. Not the best piece of wood to be using. I will need to get another one. Actually, I'll just use this. And you just keep doing that all the way around until it's nice and flush with the ground. And there you go, that's not going anywhere. You might have noticed I don't prepare the ground. It's somewhat level, but it's not perfect. There's a bit of a slope going that way. I'm not too fussed about that. Feel free to prepare the ground and get it all flat, but that's really up to you. For me, I'm not too fussed. I don't mind it looking like this, and it does the job either way. Obviously, if you have a serious slope or a lot of undulation, then you might want to fix it up. But for me, it's fairly flat, and once I fill it in with compost, it'll be perfect. So let's do that one, and then we're done for the day. And next time I'm going to be filling these up with compost, and we'll be using my homemade compost, which is sitting in the back corner over there. So we're going to turn this tree into compost. I've been leaving it here. It actually fell down from these trees over here about a month or so back. And I've left it down here to just dry out a bit, turn it into some carbon, basically the browns for compost. And I will use this inside the new raised beds. I'll mix it in with some grass after I've mowed the lawn, and we'll have our greens and our browns. Not that that's too important, but you do want to mix it up a bit so you create some aeration and make sure that the grass doesn't become a soggy mess. So today I'm going to use my chipper to chop this all up, and let's get cracking. So first let's chop off some branches. It's time to start filling up the raised beds. See how we got a mix of things that we're going to add in. Basically we're just going to compost in place, so we don't have to make a compost in a pile like I already have down that way. Because the fact is we're getting this bed ready for next year. We're not going to use this year. So what we do is we just, as you would with a normal compost, you mix in a mixture of browns and greens to add to the greens, because obviously I've got a lot of greens. I've got a lot of cardboard and paper that I've shredded, and we're going to add that all up. So let's get started. Compost is really easy. Some people complicate it quite a bit, but just try and get an even mix. Nature does it all the time on its own, and it doesn't worry about ratios. It just does what it needs to do, and you end up having lovely compost. So to start off, we're just going to throw in some of our grass and a few cuttings and weeds that we've pulled out of the garden. We're going to take some of this that we mulched up with the chipper earlier, the dry wood. I'm only going to use half because I want to use the other half in the other side. And then we're going to use half of this. Well, I don't think I need to use all of it because I think we've got quite a good mix here anyway. So I'm going to save some of this for my actual big compost pile, which is out in the corner there. So let's give it a nice mix. This is going to create lovely compost, so by the time we sow our seeds next spring, we have beautiful soil. So I'm going to mix in some of my ready-made compost. I mean, you can of course go and buy compost from the store, but filling these beds can take quite a few bags. So I'm going to go get some compost and also some soil that I dug up previously, and we're going to add it in here. So you can see this is some compost from my pile that I keep adding to every time I mow the lawn or have cuttings or vegetable scraps, and it hasn't fully decomposed yet, but that's not a problem because it's going to do the rest of the decomposing inside the actual raised bed. So the important thing for these raised beds is just that I can fill them up and get them started. This will all break down nicely and we'll have some beautiful nitrogen rich compost ready for the growing season. When we do come to planting, we are going to use a finer grain of compost, so I'll sieve it and we'll make sure that we have a nice fine compost on the top, ready for the seedlings to be able to get their roots into it. So let's mix this all up with the stuff that I put underneath. And we're going to do the same on this side. The last thing you want to do once you've done this, as you would do with any compost pile that you're making, you want to give it some water. You don't want your compost pile drying out. I might even put a tarpaulin over these just so that the compost doesn't dry out and gives it the best chance of success. Just remember, when you do plant your seeds, you're going to put nice compost on the top, seedling starting compost. So as much as this looks like a bit of a mess at the moment, once the roots are at the level when they actually reach past that top layer that you're going to add, those roots are going to be strong enough to get into this, and there's going to be some lovely nutrients. I hope this video has been useful to you, and